Hello, welcome back to Spellbound. I'm BJ the Book Witch, and this is my December wrap up. December was, not surprisingly, my lowest reading month of the whole year. There was just too many holiday festivities to enjoy, so I didn't get around to reading that much. But that said, I did read 7 total books and a total of 2,371 pages, and my average reading rating was 3.7 stars. And that's because I read 3 really, really great books and 2 really, really meh books. So let's talk about it. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. So this is Jennette McCurdy's memoir detailing how she grew up as a child star on the TV show iCarly on Nickelodeon in the 2000s, and it was published this year in 2022 by Simon & Schuster. This was an extremely compelling narrative to read, and McCurdy offers such vulnerable insights into her very complicated relationship with her mom as well as with food. But the most interesting and extremely disturbing aspects of the entire book were when she would describe detailed scenes or periods of time when she would interact with the producer Dan Schneider, the producer of the show, whom she refers to only as the creator throughout the entire book. Dan Schneider, of course, was the former renowned producer of many of the huge hits on Nickelodeon that we grew up with in the 2000s. So Drake and Josh, Victorious, iCarly, Zoe 101, even back including All That and The Amanda Show in the early 2000s. So he's credited for birthing all of those and running those shows. But in recent years, the teen stars who are my age and our age, I assume, who grew up on those sets have begun exposing what and who he really is and was on set, which is to say predatory and pedophilic. Anyway, this book is not about Dan Schneider. This book is about Jennette McCurdy and what it was like for her growing up as a child star with a mentally unwell momager and an emotionally distant father and an eating disorder that corrupted most of her childhood and teen years. She's very glib and sarcastic in her delivery and her descriptions of things, and I've seen so many other book reviewers and even the cover of this book, it's this is laugh out loud funny and hilarious. McCurdy's hilarious. But I didn't find it that way. This book is deeply unsettling and hard to read in a lot of places. In a very vulnerable and compelling sort of way, but I wouldn't describe this book as funny. I just think that McCurdy uses sarcasm as a way to process and communicate her trauma. But for that, it is a 5-star read, hands down, and I would highly recommend it. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This was published in 2015 by Orion Publishing Group. I cannot believe that it is the year of our Lord 2022, and I am just now reading this book. This book, this duology, is incredible. And I knew it would be. I did. But I'll admit, I started to get pretty hesitant after I read and started to read Shadow and Bone a couple of years ago. Other than the fact that these two completely different series take place in the same universe, it is hard to believe that they were written by the same author. Shadow and Bone is the most recycled, tropish, forgettable plot that focuses on some of the most uncompelling and annoying characters that are so one-dimensional. The entire book felt like it was written by a bot. The plot of it. The world was rich, but the plot was every other YA fantasy plot. This book, though, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, in another league. Six of Crows is a YA fantasy that follows 6 characters as they attempt an incredible heist. It uses multiple POVs and is a masterpiece in a character study. These characters feel so rich, so compelling, so fully developed that they feel positively vivid. My friend Lane says that they leap off the page, and they really do. And Bardugo is able to use 6 different POVs to weave together this incredibly fast-paced and complex plot from 6 completely unique voices that it's absolutely brilliant. In easy 5 stars and easily one of the best books of the year. Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This was published in 2016 by Orion Publishing Group. Naturally, I read the sequel immediately. And fortunately, I have the collector's edition of this duology. And in this edition, in the foreword, there is an author letter from Bardugo where she introduces the sequel. And typically, I don't like that. I don't think books or sequels should need an introduction. And this one didn't need it. But I found Bardugo's intro to be very substantive in that it offered from her perspective why this book and this sequel exists at all. Technically, the heist plot from the first book wraps up pretty well at the end of the first book. There's not a huge cliffhanger. But Bardugo explains that the characters weren't over. They still had more to learn and grow in order to be fully developed and realized as an arc. So like the plot arc was done, but the characters were not. She just says it much better than I did just now. So Bardugo extends the story in a way that is just as compelling, arguably even more so, because it is rooted so firmly in the characters and how they themselves grow from their backstory to the present in light of the heist that took place in the first book. This book is a masterpiece in writing, character development, and plot. 5 stars, perfection. It will break your heart. The Legend of the Christmas Witch by Dan Murphy and Aubrey Plaza. This was published in 2021 by Viking Books for Young Readers, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. This is a children's book that explores the legend of Kris Kringle, or really, it's about his sister, Kris Dorn. And it's about the fear of women, especially women with power, and what that means for the fate of Christmas. It was very good, and I rated it 4.5 stars. The 12 Dates of Christmas by Jenny Bayliss. This was published in 2020 by Putnam, an imprint of Penguin Books. This one follows 34-year-old Kate, which in contempo rom-com years means that she's geriatric. This book felt like having a 6-year-old describe to you their favorite movie, right? So they're not going to give you the plot in any sort of sensical order or even the highlights of the plot in a sequential or even a hierarchical sort of outline. No, they're going to move you through their favorite scenes with incredible detail and then also tell you about their favorite characters, going into incredible descriptions that involve a lot of, oh yeah, well that makes sense because before kind of backstory tangents that provide like adjacent exposition. So that's what this book did. And the reason why I'm so frustrated by that is like, it's not hard to see what the plot was here, right? Main character is 34, so ancient, what with that biological clock ticking louder than Big Ben. And even though she would never stoop so low as to participate in an online dating program that set you up with 12 compatible and also chaperoned dates for the holidays, because she's not like other women. Her friend talked her into it, and she paid lots of money because she has lots of money. And so she might as well go, which is a convenient way to set her up as both participating in the base and tired and cliche dating rituals of the populace, while simultaneously making sure that everyone knows that she herself is above it. Anyway, it's not hard to figure out where this is going to go, what with the title. So you've got 12 dates. That's 12 opportunities to write vivid, even stereotypical if you want, but different male love interests. That's 12 potential silly or funny or wacky scenes, or even sexy scenes with like 12 different people. You've got the world is your oyster. And yet the author took no advantage of this whatsoever. We only got maybe 3 dates described in their entirety. And we only got 3 to 4 depictions of characters. Only 2 were present in more than one scene. Out of 12 dates, we got like 4, kind of, because they were only present in half of a chapter, but then never reappeared. We did, however, receive glowing details of every single ancillary character that lives in their entire quaint small town and goes to this bakery every single day. We learn their routines, their habits, their backstories, their relationships with her parents who are deceased, and then her friends' parents. We got the whole Leviticus and Numbers son of kind of setup. The only friend that she has in the entire book, in fact, the only character who's described in richer detail than the protagonist, is her one single friend in town who just so happens to be a dude, who just so happens to be her childhood best friend as well, but he's very awkward around her because of that one time in college that they just happened to hook up, which caused a decade-long rift between them. This entire story was exhausting, and it felt like the book equivalent of Dry Mouth. My next book was a reread of Desperate Measures by Katee Robert, which was in fact just as bad as the first time that I read it, so I'm not going to spend any time talking about it here. You can just watch my original wrap-up from before, like 2 years ago. All of the thoughts are exactly the same. And finally, Midnight in Everwood by Maria Kuzniar. This one was published last year in 2021 by HQ, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. So this book is a Nutcracker retelling following Marietta, who is expected to grow up and take her place in Edwardian society. At 21, she's basically a spinster anyway. But when the mysterious and alluring Dr. Drosselmeyer shows up next door, Marietta is positively enchanted, and she finds herself spirited away to another world where she will have to be both clever and brave enough to escape. This story is about the importance of being true to yourself, even when it is dangerous to do so, the necessity of female friendships and alliances, and the possibility of true fairy tale love. This was a beautiful, dreamlike story. Admittedly slow because the story unfolds like a ballet. So the main plot itself, like the main conflict, doesn't really begin until Act 2, which in this story is over 30% of the way through the book. So for a YA fantasy, that is incredibly slow. But this is a beautiful, immersive, wintry, Christmassy story, and it is worth it if you stick around. It was really well written, it was a really compelling story, and I enjoyed it very much. I gave it 4.5 stars. So that's my December wrap-up, but what about you? What did you read in December? Did you read any of the ones that I mentioned? Did you read any fun and cozy rom-coms, any cozy mysteries, any immersive and wintry fantasies? Let me know down below. And then if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you loved it, hit subscribe. And of course, there's always Instagram. But take care, Happy New Year, and happy reading.